All right, so there we were in the raft at the bottom of this canyon. It's getting dark, and we have no idea where the nearest boat ramp is. So it's time for us to start climbing. So, how did we end up at the bottom of this canyon? Well, I don't know, several weeks before that, my buddy Ben and I, we got laid off. Well, we didn't really get laid off. The fly shop, the Austin Angler that we worked at, shut down after 23 years. I'd been working there the last 10 or 12 years. Ben had been there for a couple years. And we decided, you know what? We don't have jobs. It's probably been 20 years at that point since I had been unemployed. So we decided to take an open-ended fishing trip. So we got his truck, we got my raft, and we just headed west. We started in the beginning of July, and we had no plans for when we were going to be back in Texas. It got to the point to where if the phone rang and it was one of our girlfriends calling, it was like, oh man, don't answer, because she's going to ask you, when are you coming home? And you're going to say, I really don't know. And then she's going to start crying, and then you're going to feel terrible for hours. Because that had happened several times already on the trip to both of us. So anyway, a few weeks in, my buddy Clay Towery, Clay's no longer with us, unfortunately. That's a whole nother set of stories about Clay Towery. But Clay meets us, he flies into Salt Lake, and we're going to go and just have a good time. We have no agenda. We don't even know where we're going. But I did have a buddy who worked at the fly shop in Jackson Hole, Scott Sanchez. He'd been there forever. He's a legend. He's a guy that invented the double bunny fly. And we're like, hey, Scott, where could we go? We got a raft, we got 3 guys that can row, and we got no agenda. So Scott tells us about this one particular river. I can't remember which river it was. There's 2 rivers. Could have been one or the other, but doesn't really matter where we were, right? So he's like, yeah, it's awesome. There's nothing to worry about. Pretty mellow float, you know. I don't really know it that well. Not that many people do it, but there's a lady that does shuttles, and I'll give you her number. So I call the lady. She tells us where the put in is, where the takeout is, where to leave the money, and I tell her what kind of vehicle it is, where we're going to have the keys. And so we go the next morning, find the river, find the bridge at the put in. Everything's awesome. We shove off, leave the keys, leave the money. We don't care about anything. Now, the shuttle lady told us to get out when we get to the big metal bridge, and that would be the takeout. So we're fishing, we're catching a few fish. It's awesome. We're catching some nice cutthroats, mostly cutthroat. And, it's been like, 2 or 3 hours, and all of a sudden we come to a bridge. It's like metal and concrete, and we're thinking like, oh wow, that was really a short float. But we never been on this river before, so we're thinking, well, maybe that was it. Maybe we should have fished it slower. So we get out, we start looking around. We don't see the truck. We don't really see much, because we're like out in the middle of nowhere. And we see some guys working on a house. So we go over there and say, hey, man, are we at such and such crossing? Can't remember the name of the crossing. I don't know if we even knew the name of the crossing at the time either. And they're like, nah, you got a couple more bridges down there, just keep going. You'll see it when you get to it. So, we hop back in the boat. We're like, we're looking for the big metal bridge. That's pretty obvious, right? So we keep fishing. Fishing's getting better and better as the day goes on. We're catching some nice big cutthroat. And, we go under a couple of bridges, but there's no metal bridges. They're all like concrete bridges, no metal bridges at all. So we're thinking, we hadn't gotten there. We hadn't got to the takeout yet. And all of a sudden, everything sort of changes. Like we look around, the landscape is completely different, and we're like catching fish on every cast. I mean, it's crazy. It's so like somebody flipped a switch and the fish just are just going berserk. I mean, like we're doubling up and, it's just out of control. But I just had like this weird feeling, because I'm looking around and like there's like hardly any vegetation on the banks. And it looks kind of like maybe this whole area had flooded or something. And then all of a sudden, there's like this big body of water right in front of us. Like the lake, the river ends, and it's like, it's not a lake, it's another river, but a much bigger river. And I distinctly remember just get out at the metal bridge, not like go till you hit that other big river and get out. And I'm thinking, we're lost. My buddies, Ben and Clay, are like, nah, dude, we're good. Let's just keep fishing. So we take a left turn and we start going down this other river. And like I said, it's getting dark and I'm not seeing anything. And, we're in a pretty deep canyon. And I'm like, guys, we need to pull over. Something has gone wrong here. So we drag the boat back upstream to the confluence of these two rivers. And we park. And Clay and I get out and hike up out of the canyon. And we can see the town off in the distance, the town that we came from. And we get a cell signal. We did have cell phones at that time. And we call the lady who had shuttled our truck. I've never seen this woman in my life up to this point. She just shuttled the truck. So I call her and I'm like, hey, I think we missed the last takeout. We never saw a big metal bridge. And she's like, oh yeah, I guess it's not metal. She's like, I hadn't been over there in a long time, and instead of trying to call us back after she shuttled the truck and said, hey, it's not a metal bridge, it's a concrete bridge, never mind that. She was like, well, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, well, I want you to come over here where we are. We can walk and kind of I think we can make our way to the highway from where we are, because you were like out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know where we are, but I can see that maybe the highway's over there. And I tell her that's where we'll meet you. And she's like, you want me to come now? And I'm like, yeah, we're kind of like in a bad situation. We're stuck here. Our boat's at the bottom of this canyon and it's getting dark. We don't have camping gear. I don't even know if we had flashlights. We were planning on being done, So she's like, I'm supposed to be going to my AA meeting. And I was like, whew. You're going to have to miss your AA meeting tonight. I'm sure they have another one tomorrow, probably tomorrow morning, worst case scenario, tomorrow night. And she's like, okay. So Clay and I hike out, and sure enough, we do eventually come to the highway. And so we just kind of like stand there because we have no idea whether this lady's going to show up or not. And then, sure enough, all of a sudden, two vehicles come rolling up, and we're like waving because we hadn't seen anybody else come down this road. I say highway. It was a paved road, but it was out in the middle of nowhere. So there's Ben's truck and, the shuttle vehicle that the lady was in, and she hops out and hands us the keys and, jumps in the other car. They speed off. I hope she made it to the AA meeting because she seemed pretty determined to get there. Much more important to her than getting us back to our vehicle. But anyway, we got the truck now. So we drive the truck, kind of cross country. It's Ben's truck, so me and Clay, we're just like, we're going for it. And we get about as close as we can to where we think Ben is. And we get out and we kind of start bushwhacking over towards the rim of the canyon. And sure enough, Ben has started a signal fire. It's like that kind of situation. So Clay and I hike down to where Ben is, and you know, the raft is there, fully rigged raft with a frame, all our fishing gear, coolers, you know, everything is in the raft at the bottom of this canyon. And so Clay timed it from the point that we dropped in, you know, when we walked away from the truck until we got to where the raft was about 15 minutes. But that was 15 minutes walking downhill, not carrying anything. We got to get the raft from there back onto the trailer. So it was maybe an hour, hour and a half later, you know, definitely an hour and a half later to 2 hours. We were sitting on the raft. It's on the trailer behind the truck. And we're like, all right. We crack a couple of beers and we're like, that last mile of fishing was so epic. And now we're all back, you know, in one piece. So we were like, okay, would we have done that trip again if we would have known what we were going to have to do to get the boat out? And it was so bad that all three of us were like, no. Really happy that it happened, but we would never do it again on purpose. Now, a little side note to that story is that while we were waiting for the lady to come pick us up, we called our buddy Scott over in Jackson and told him where we were and what happened, and was there a chance that we could keep going? And he was like, no, stop immediately where you are and extract yourselves from the situation, because the lake that you just floated into is at like 20% capacity. If you were to continue paddling downstream maybe another day or so, you would come to a boat ramp, and he's like, and the boat ramp would probably be like 50 or 60 feet up a canyon wall from where you would be sitting in your boat. So we made the right decision to get out of there. Anyway, that's just, you know, one of the things that happens when you're out there trying to have a good time. You know, like I said, fond memories now, but at the time it was pretty brutal. If you like this kind of stuff, I got tons of stories about all kinds of crazy stuff, fishing trips, you know, being in a band, just climbing and almost getting my toes frozen off, all kinds of stuff. If you like this kind of stuff, give the video a thumbs up, maybe subscribe to the channel. You know, that helps me out a ton. And thanks for being here. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. And in the meantime, good luck out there.